What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Wellman's Podcast. My name is Brian Brosey. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Keoni Tita. Keoni, how are you today?
Doing good. Thanks, everybody, for being on. Brian and I want to talk about something that we all should be doing at least annually and getting our blood work done with our physicians. And I say that because staying on top of that can really help prevent things from being emergency situations or disastrous. And getting your annual blood work can keep you out of the hospital and keep you healthy. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a good thing to go on. And really, this blood work is just the main thing that we're going to go over today is really what's called it's known as a comprehensive metabolic panel. And it really is about, I think, 14 tests. And this comprehensive metabolic panel that your primary care physician should run on you at least annually provides a check on kidney function, and then liver function. It can help determine diabetes, parathyroid status, electrolyte imbalances, and fluid balance. So they're really important to do. And I think most of us have had these tests done, but I don't think most of us really understand why they're useful or what they're used for and why their docs are doing them. So that's why I want to go over this. And Brian and I wanted to just talk about all this just to help, keep people well, keep you guys out of the, hospital, keep you away from the doctors.
Yeah, absolutely. So you should do this once a year, Keoni? You should be getting this test?
At least most insurance will cover it once a year. All these tests should be covered by your insurance. So they're not like some of the tests that we talked about, last year, what we called anti-aging tests.
So you shouldn't have to twist your doctor's arm.
No, these should be done on a regular basis, and your doctor should run them every time you get your annual checkup with your doctor, which I encourage everybody to do. Brian and I encourage everybody to do because it's really a great way to prevent disaster, and it is what conventional medicine defines as early detection.
Yeah, absolutely. You get your oil changed, you get the diagnostics run on your car, you should have the same thing done for your body.
Right. And it's a good analogy because you can think about this as a car. And I think if you understand the human body a little bit better, you will be able to understand what these tests are used for.
All right. Well, help us understand, especially me.
So the first one, and we've talked about this a lot in our various podcasts, is blood glucose. This test should be done. It's best to do it fasting. So it's also known as a fasting blood glucose. Typically the level is between 70 and 100 milligrams per deciliter. And if you run in that, you're considered normal within those two numbers. The standard diagnosis of diabetes is when two separate blood tests of fasting blood glucose shows blood glucose greater than 126 milligrams per deciliter. So really, this is a test of making sure that you're not diabetic or pre-diabetic. It's a screen for diabetes and pre-diabetes. So that's really all it is. And why is that important? Because we know that if you have elevated blood sugar, what happens is it just slows down and causes so-called internal rusting of the body. We call that, the medical term for is glycation. You get these sugar molecules binding to proteins, and it slows them down, creates inflammation, and hence causes accelerated aging. And accelerated aging is associated with, of course, diabetes. A quicker way of dying, but also you are more at risk for cancer, heart disease, arthritis, and of course, diabetes. So it's an important test to run, but again, it's just a screening test. If you have two or more of these tests done that shows that it's elevated, your doctor may do more testing, and it's likely that you may have a blood sugar issue like diabetes or prediabetes.
Okay, so the first one's looking at your glucose levels.
Yeah, so it's blood glucose. And the next one, everybody's heard of the word calcium, is we're just checking for serum calcium. And most of the calcium in your body is stored in the bone. And that's 99% of it is in the bone, but about 1% of it is in the blood. And these tests can monitor bone diseases. Think about a bone having excessive metabolism going on, and calcium just pouring into the bloodstream, so to speak. From that, you'd know that there's an issue if you have elevated calcium or the calcium levels are too low. So basically, it's a screen for monitoring bone diseases. And what organ also helps put calcium into the blood? We call it the parathyroid organ. Think about it pairing bone, taking calcium off the bone and putting it into the blood. So then this can give you an idea of if something's going on with the parathyroid organ. The parathyroid organ sits right within the tissue of the thyroid organ. Things that can cause the levels to be too high or too low, or sometimes meds can do that. Think about taking a lot of vitamin D. This is why some docs will say, be careful, check your vitamin D if you're on supplements, because vitamin D causes calcium to go from the gut into the blood and can raise calcium levels. So sometimes excessive vitamin D supplementation cause it. Taking excessive calcium can cause it, and certain other drugs may increase the levels here also.
Do you think the vitamin D is a problem most people should look out for if you're just taking one a day?
I've never seen it clinically be a problem even at high levels, but still, if your vitamin D level is high, and that's, I consider high being anything above 80 on a regular 25 hydroxy vitamin D test, especially if you're healthy, really over 100, you may be getting symptoms of, tremors or anything that would show that you have high calcium. Could be sweating, weird symptoms, fatigue. That may be something you want to check. I've never seen it though. I've never seen it happen. Usually the body has a good way of kind of balancing that and optimizing your calcium level.
Okay.
But it's something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Usually if you see high calcium in the blood, it's usually like excessive calcium intake or something is going on with the parathyroid hormone, or with the parathyroid, where it's putting out a bunch of hormone and causing a lot of calcium to be reabsorbed back from the bone back into the blood.
Now, is that the same pathway that, I guess I can easily see how that would lead to osteoporosis, but is that how basically the calcium's leached off the bone and it weakens the bone? Is that how
it's part of the process?
Okay.
It's part of the process. Another thing is, think about this. If you're an excessive soda drinker, right? Your body has to balance the pH in the blood. And one of the ways to balance pH in the blood is by making sure you have calcium in there. So if your blood pH is too acidic, you can balance that out by taking calcium off the bone. So isn't that interesting? So a poor diet may affect that. A high sugar diet may cause that also,
Yeah.
So, and then think about the other way. If you're working out and you're stimulating your bone, then your bone is, your body's going to tell your bone to build more, and then it's going to take calcium out of the blood more efficiently.
Yeah. Wow. That reminds me, yesterday we were watching a TV show, Keoni, and they were talking about the alkaline diet.
Uh-huh.
Bullshit or not?
Well, I think it's overhyped. I can tell you that. I think it's a good way to sell a bunch of stuff like alkaline water and these alkaline machines and stuff like that. But let me just put it to you this way: at least there is something to it, okay? But it's not like the end all be all to health. All right, let me put it that way.
Yeah, in short.
If you eat a healthy diet, you're gonna tend to be more alkaline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Your blood pH is going to be balanced. But let me tell you, your blood pH is finely tuned. It's very, very tightly controlled. So it's like very difficult to to go too alkaline or too acidic. And if you did, you'd probably be dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
so but yeah, a healthier diet, greens, fruits, vegetables, all those things can make you more alkaline in your body and seem to have, at least in theory, have an effect where you'll be healthier for it. But I think it's overhyped with what I know right now.
Yeah. Certainly the drinking just the alkaline water and all that kind of nonsense. But
well, yeah, especially when you're like, okay, if you're drinking soda, a healthy thing to do is just drink water. Any water. Go there first before you start buying these expensive machines and stuff. And again, it's not going to hurt you to do that stuff, except maybe financially.
Right.
So so it's fine. But I think some of this stuff is a little overhyped. That's my personal opinion. And, I'm partly speaking from what I know about diet, but also, I honestly don't know all the studies on it.
Yeah.
I can just tell you what, the basics of what I know.
Okay.
So there may be some ignorance on my part with that, but yeah, I think it's overhyped. All right. So the blood glucose and calcium are considered general tests. All right. Now let's go into some of the kidney function tests. All right. And one test is called blood urea nitrogen. You'll see it on your blood labs called BUN or BUN.
Mm-hmm.
So blood urea nitrogen. So as the name suggests, you're measuring the amount of urea nitrogen found in the blood. And the liver produces urea in the urea cycle as a waste product from the digestion of proteins. Okay. So as proteins break down, you create ammonia. Ammonia is then converted into you get these nitrogen compounds where they're then converted into ammonia and urea. And so it basically assesses kidney function. Why? We've been talking about the liver. Well, the kidney clears that out. And if the kidney is damaged, well, guess what you're going to have? You're going to have an elevation of urea nitrogen in the blood. So that can give you an idea of what's going on in the kidney. All right. So that's pretty much why it's run, to assess kidney function.
And that would just tell you if you have too much protein in your diet more so, or you're overusing your kidneys, or how does...
So that's a great question. So you do want to rule those out. The main thing that we really want to take care of is we want to make sure that the kidney is not damaged. But okay. Yes, in theory, yes, having an excessive protein diet may possibly elevate this one, but not as much as the other one, which I'll tell you in just a minute, the other kidney function test. And that one is creatinine.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about creatine, the supplement, although it is related. We're talking about creatinine. And how are they related? Well, creatinine is the breakdown product of creatine phosphate in the muscle, one of your energy systems in the muscle, right? So it gives you a quick energy source. Creatine phosphate breakdown. And this is produced at a fairly, creatine phosphate breakdown is done at a fairly constant rate in the body. And it's, of course, depends on muscle mass. It's an important indicator of renal health because it's a easily measured byproduct of muscle metabolism, and it is excreted by the kidneys. All right, and so if there's kidney issues, just like with blood urea nitrogen, you may see an elevation of creatinine in the blood. So like you said, you're going to tend with a high protein diet or working out a lot or having a lot of muscle mass on, you may see an elevation of creatinine. That's not necessarily a problem.
And where else would I see this elevation in, I guess, in problem instances? Would be kidney failure, or am I jumping the gun with things
Yeah, you
like
would. That? You'd see an elevation with kidney failure. Yeah, any kidney damage. There are other kidney function tests, but these two are the best screening tests to get an idea of what's going on with the kidneys. Okay. Very important, right? Because your kidneys are an organ that help detox you, and if you go into kidney failure, it's awful, but a lot of people have to be put on dialysis and to keep themselves alive doing this. So you want to make sure your kidneys stay healthy. And what is the number one cause of kidney failure? Well, it goes back to the first test we talked about, but it's diabetes.
Hmm.
So elevated blood glucose. It's not high protein diets that cause kidney problems. The main macronutrient that causes kidney problems is an excessive high sugary carbohydrate diet over years. Now, if you are in kidney failure going there, yes, you do have to be careful with eating too much protein. But that is a myth that excessive protein damages your kidneys. No, it's excessive carbohydrate over time that damages your kidneys more than anything. In fact, excess carbohydrate damages your body more than anything through the glycation reaction that we talked about at the beginning.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone should know that. That's like one of the common misnomers with protein in kidneys for sure.
Right. Yeah. So those are the 2 kidney tests that are associated with the comprehensive metabolic panel. And so we just went over 4 tests. So now let's go to the next group of tests that are known as the electrolytes. And electrolyte levels are tightly regulated by the body. But all the individual normalities and ratios are tightly controlled and should be within certain ranges and stuff. If they are not, if abnormalities exist, then you're talking about acid-base imbalances, possibly kidney function, electrolyte disturbances. Okay, and we'll go over what that may show up in symptoms in your body if you really have issues with that as we go through these.
Okay.
So the first electrolyte we're going to talk about is sodium, and sodium is a mineral that really helps regulate blood volume. Think about sodium, salt. Wherever sodium goes, we learned this in medical school, water will follow,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and some blood pressure medicines work on getting rid of sodium. And guess what? It acts like a diuretic effect. Water follows. You'll pee a lot by getting rid of sodium. But, and it helps with just osmotic equilibrium, and then has something to do, it helps with pH. So what else does sodium do? It supports the work of your nerves and muscles, regulates, your fluid balance. Normal sodium level is 135 to 145 milliequivalents per milliliter. So low sodium occurs when sodium in your blood falls below 135 milliequivalents per liter. Now, if you go low sodium, you may have, may indicate, you may get like cramping. Again, it helps with nerves. Muscle function's not working as well. So that's the main indicator. Sodium's low. It's very rare that one's going to be low, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially with our diet. I think, for that to be with the American diet, for that one, I think what is the recommended dose of sodium? Daily recommended minimum dose is like 500 milligrams of sodium. I think most Americans get upwards, 10 times that sometimes.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Sodium. Yeah.
One basket of fries.
Well, yeah, we'll do it. That's right. The next one is potassium. Potassium is very important for heart and for your heart function, muscle function, really, but especially we're really concerned with heart function with potassium. If that if the levels go too high or too low, it can really indicate an emergency medical problem. Okay, and it's rare that would go low, but symptoms of potassium levels being too high would be like arrhythmia, irregular heartbeats. Fatigue, weakness. Another one is paralysis in your arms and legs.
With it being too high?
Too high, yeah.
Wow.
And then low, you may get irregular heart rhythms also. Again, low, just like sodium, you may get muscle cramping, twitches, weakness, again, fatigue. I know these are kind of like, like fatigue, nausea, constipation. These symptoms can really mask a lot of other things, or, so it's good to get these blood levels done to see, because it's very important to keep that up. So too much potassium in the blood is called hyperkalemia. And, what would that possibly indicate if you have too much? Well, it could indicate kidney disease, right? Because if the kidneys are not functioning right and they're not getting rid of excess potassium, then your kidneys aren't filtering correctly. So maybe kidney disease. Other things would be Traumatic injuries like burns could elevate it.
Hmm.
There's some hormonal diseases. Addison's disease is one of them. Type 1 diabetes, some medications. What else? Some diuretics that will hold on to potassium, and while they're getting rid of like sodium, where potassium stays elevated. And then too little potassium in the blood is called hypokalemia, and it indicates most likely a diet too low in potassium, which is rare. Potassium is found in almost all foods, but alcoholism is a big one. Okay, so too little potassium in blood. Loss of body fluids. So this is the reason why vomiting and diarrhea can really be life-threatening if you can't get it under control, right? So this is why if you're really sick, you want to get electrolyte solutions in you, soups, stews like Pedialyte, even things like Gatorade can really help here to keep you, especially if you this reminds me, I was years ago I went to go visit my brother in Ukraine and had a meal one night, and I think I had to travel somewhere else in Ukraine to get to a hotel, and I was there for at least a day. Well, after that night, I was so sick, like throwing up, diarrhea, and you can just feel the life going out of your body when it won't stop, and you get, at least I did, I got to the point where I was like, man, I don't even care if I die at this point, but it was to the point where I got there. Luckily, I don't know if I passed out or whatever, but the next day my body purged all that, and I was, felt a lot better. But I remember thinking I got to get fluid in me, and it was very hard to do because I couldn't keep anything down.
Yeah. Yeah. Little insight to your psyche there. A few vomiting trips and you're ready to call it quits. All right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll tell you what, man. I mean, you get so sick. You get so sick. You're like, I don't want to go through this anymore.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting how the body is, right? It's like, man, if you have a bug in you, it's like, all right, we're getting rid of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Through all the holes. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We're getting rid of it. So yeah, it's interesting. What else? Oh, this is a little neat tidbit. If you want to cause your doctor some concern on your potassium test, like if you go in there beforehand, if you like clench your muscles and clench your fists right before you get the blood drawn, you can increase your potassium levels in your blood. So it may
seems like it might have something to do with like that sodium potassium pump.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, it can lead to a poor result. Don't do that. I'm just. Don't cause stress to your doctor. Probably has enough stress. All right. The next electrolyte is, we talked about sodium, and its partner is chloride, right? So sodium chloride is table salt. But anyway, chloride helps regulate the amount of fluid in the body, just like sodium does and potassium does. Helps maintain the acid-base balance. And as you can tell, most of the time the concentrations mirror the concentrations of sodium, hence sodium chloride. Right? Basically, it's used to just maintain electrical neutrality at the cellular level by moving in and out of cells. Right? Increased blood chloride usually indicates dehydration. Right. So if you're dehydrated, you may lose a lot of sodium. You may not lose the chloride. You may have an excessive level of chloride. But it can also occur with other problems that, where there's high sodium, you may also have high chloride. So they tend to go together.
Yeah. I think the important thing to note with all these is just a lot of these are elements, or the important building blocks of these pathological processes. So these are why we look at these things, and they're so important to look at once a year, because you can change your diet or tweak something and affect these numbers that are going to have a long-term outcome in your health.
Right. And by doing these things and looking at it, you can really head things off at the pass. Like you stop things from going out of control.
Yeah. And we're really talking about the basic building blocks here of your health.
Right. Yeah. Decreased level of blood chloride, called hypochloremia. Again, this would occur in any disorder that causes low blood sodium.
Mm-hmm.
All right, pretty much. It can occur with congestive heart failure, prolonged vomiting, some lung diseases. What else? I think that's about it. I think Addison's disease is another one. An increased level can indicate, as we said, dehydration, even starvation. Decreased level of urine. We're talking about urine now. What we were just talking about was blood. So an increased level of urine chloride can indicate dehydration, starvation, or an increased salt intake, and a decreased level of urine chloride. This is not part of the comprehensive metabolic panel, but you will see chloride done as a urine and a blood test.
Should you get both, or are this?
Typically, when you go to your doctor, typically they're just going to do a blood test, but
Mm-hmm.
they may also do a urine test. And a decreased level of urine chloride can give us an indication of something going on with your adrenal glands, like primary aldosteronism, which is also known as Conn syndrome, but it's an endocrine disorder characterized by excessive secretion of that hormone, aldosterone, from the adrenal glands. And overproduction of aldosterone causes retention of sodium and a loss of potassium in the body, resulting in high blood pressure, hypertension, congestive heart failure. There's another one, malabsorption syndrome, diarrhea. So anyway, so that's chloride. And then the last one that I think a lot of people don't really kind of understand is what we call bicarbonate, or total CO2 on the blood lab. And again, this goes back to, just like the other ones, it helps maintain the body's acid-base balance. And it's probably the most important factor to look at for the acid-base balance. It works with the other electrolytes that we just talked about, sodium, potassium chloride, to maintain electrical neutrality within the cell. And it measures the total amount of carbon dioxide in the blood, right? So total CO2, that's what you'll see it listed as. And think about what's going on in the cell. CO2 is a waste product. So as you're going through aerobic respiration, CO2 is going to be you have to get rid of it.
Yeah, you have to blow it off pretty much.
You have to blow it off, right? It's like think about it as being car exhaust, to use an analogy, right?
Good analogy, yeah.
But it's the metabolic byproduct of all your cellular processes.
Or you could just hold your breath forever and say you're on the alkaline diet. Just collect CO2 inside.
Well, actually, I'm going to clarify that for you in just a minute, because that's not actually what would happen. But we'll go over that in just a second.
Perfect.
All right. Let's see. So you were just hitting on something. Measuring bicarbonate, or total CO2, can show us if you are in acidosis or alkalosis. Okay. All right. So it can see if there's an imbalance in pH. And this is typically caused by a number of underlying conditions. But let's just go over this. So think about what's going on. Like if the lungs if you're exhaling CO2, right? Right. Do you remember your little equation? CO2 plus water goes to carbonic acid, which leads to bicarbonate, that type of thing. All right. Well, on the left side of the equation, CO2 plus water, if you're blowing off CO2 at a great rate, like hyperventilating, okay, then what's going on there is you have to balance that out. You may go into respiratory alkalosis, not acidosis, as you were applying before. Okay. So that's what's going on there. And bicarbonate, the total CO2, that
if you're hyperventilating, you'll go into acidosis. Is that what you're saying?
No. If you're hyperventilating, you're going into respiratory alkalosis. You were saying that's what you're implying. You're going in acidosis, but you're going into. So if you think about that equation, CO2 plus H2O, right?
Yeah, the
equals
equilibrium.
the equilibrium, right, goes to carbonic acid, right? So that's where your acid is, which goes to bicarb plus your hydrogen ion, right? So if you blow off CO2, you have to balance that equation with the
Yep.
carbonic acid. So you're breaking down carbonic acid to make more CO2, right? So you're taking the acid. So now you're going into respiratory alkalosis.
Yep. Okay.
All right. So that's the way I would think about it. It's a little confusing, but it's what you wouldn't think. So respiratory acidosis is a condition that occurs when the lungs can't remove enough carbon dioxide. So think about holding your breath or something like that. Excessive CO2. So if you have a lot of CO2, you're pushing the equation back towards acid. Right. So CO2 plus water is going to push it back towards acid. So that's going to be respiratory acidosis. Anyway, this can happen in what? If you can't breathe well, right? So respiratory failure can put you in respiratory acidosis. If you're on a ventilation machine that's not working properly, that can put you there. Also, the kidneys also help with this, but most of the time it's the lungs that are helping balance this stuff. But looking at the bicarb or total CO2 can give us an indication of if there is a lung problem or a kidney problem or something's going on in your metabolism there. So just think about it that way without really going into the equations. I mean, that's why it's important. And again, we talked about at the very beginning of this that your blood pH is tightly controlled, but and there's many ways, fail-safe systems in the body to keep it tightly controlled. But if you're not breathing properly, if you go anywhere close to going outside of that range, that pH range, that is an emergency situation.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right? So you've ever seen somebody hyperventilating, right? So if they're hyperventilating, what are they doing? They're blowing off more CO2, right? So one of the things that you've seen people do is have them blow into a bag, breathe into a bag.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Okay. Why? Because you're trapping the CO2, so you're breathing it back in.
Okay.
So that would help.
That helps. That helps make more sense. I went through cardiopulm and had struggled with that respiratory alkalosis, acidosis, but that bag example really helps. Actually, that makes a lot of sense then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, that can help. But so this is another thing, more personal anecdotal stories from me. I actually experienced panic attacks back in my medical school days because I guess it was just lack of sleep, probably poor diet.
Probably the hell on earth that medical school is.
Yeah, right. So I experienced that, and what happens is you hyperventilate. That's part of the symptomology. And that hyperventilation, very quickly with hyperventilation, you can feel like you have no control of your body, or that you have impending doom and are going to die. And one thing that may help is, maybe breathing into a bag, especially if you're hyperventilating, just to get the CO2 back in there. So hyperventilation is respiratory alkalosis. Okay, not acidosis. When you have trouble breathing, you're not, respiratory failure, then that's respiratory acidosis, could lead you to that. All right. So those, let's just go over them real quickly. Those are the electrolyte tests. We did sodium, potassium, chloride, and bicarbonate or total CO2. So those are 4. Those are the main ones on a comprehensive metabolic panel. Now let's go to what's known as the protein tests. So one test that's done is total protein. And protein in your body is in the serum, I should say, in the blood, is made up of a protein called albumin and globulin. Okay. Let's just put it this way. So think about, we're talking about protein. So what are some common ways that you may see a decrease in total protein in the body? Well, one way is that, you're not eating or not getting enough protein in your diet, right? That would show up. You may also see total protein increase by dehydration, right? If you losing water, it would look like the concentration of protein in the serum is increasing. So some of this is common sense, right? So, if total protein is increased or decreased, well, common sense is, well, you could think, well, are you taking in too much protein, or are you not drinking enough water, that type of thing.
Right.
And if you rule those out, which you may, then you want to look further into this. So production where albumin or globulin may be impaired or decreased, those are molecules that are made in the liver. So what would that indicate? Possibly that maybe there's a liver disease, okay, or some form of malnutrition. Let's see. If protein is not being if protein is typically should not be seen in the kidney or in the urine, right? If you're seeing protein being dumped in the kidney, then that may indicate some type of kidney problem. So that's why so on urine tests, if you see protein, especially high amounts, it could be a problem. You want to look further into that. Let's see. So let's go albumin. Albumin is the protein. It's made in the liver, makes up about 60% of the total protein in the blood, and it plays many roles, many roles. It keeps fluid from leaking out of the tissues. So, if you see edema in the tissues, it may be an albumin problem.
Yeah.
It also transports all your hormones, vitamins, drugs. It transports calcium, bound calcium throughout the body. So you could think of it as a transport protein. So if your liver is not making any or is damaged and you have an albumin problem, you may see a lot of fluid buildup in the body. You may see things like ascites. You may see things like fluid buildup, in the arms and legs, especially the arms. So it's a very important thing to look at. So low blood albumin is probably, think about liver disease or kidney disease. Kidney disease, like we just talked about, there's a syndrome called nephrotic syndrome. That's when high amounts of albumin are being lost in the urine via the kidneys in the urine. Okay. And then, you're really looking for low blood albumin. That's the main thing. But what about high blood albumin? It's typically not a big deal. Usually it's due to dehydration, right? So if you lose water, it looks like the concentration of albumin goes high.
Right.
All right. And I didn't really talk about globulin so much because we didn't usually, you may break that apart. Like if total protein is really high, a doc may want to look at globulin, and that globulin can give us an indication of immune function in the body. What's your immune status like? But it's typically not part by itself of the comprehensive metabolic panel.
Okay.
All right. Usually it's total protein is one measure, and then the other measure is albumin.
And my MD will know, if I say comprehensive metabolic panel, he knows this is exactly what it is.
Yep. He'll know exactly what this is.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. And he'll know what to run it. So interesting note about protein, and this goes back to the blood sugar, the fasting glucose we talked about. If glucose is high, what does it do? It's going to bind to protein, right? Well, it will glycate albumin and your other proteins, and it can alter the structure and function of all these proteins that sugars bind to. And what does that do? That will stop or inhibit the optimal function of proteins in your body. So, think about enzymes. These are all proteins, right? Albumin is a transport protein. If it can't do its function right, you're going to have problems. And this binding of sugar to protein is called advanced glycation end products. It's a very fitting acronym because what is it? It's age. So you think about if you have advanced glycation end products, lots of them, you are aging quickly, and it's going to result in abnormal biological effects on your body.
Okay.
Okay.
It's definitely a very important one to look at.
Right. And we talked about a blood test last year. Well, we talked about it a couple of times, but hemoglobin A1C, you remember? That's a marker to see about diabetes. It's another measure. In fact, if you have a high fasting blood glucose, your doctor may want to run a hemoglobin A1C. And this is another protein. All we're checking here is the hemoglobin in the blood cell and how much sugar coating is on it, which gives us an indication of how much glycation is going on, not only at the red blood cell level, but throughout the body. So if hemoglobin A1C is high, guess what else glycation is high? Your albumin glycation is high. All your protein glycation is high. Hence, you are aging quicker than you should.
Yeah, no bueno.
No good. That's right. All right. So, so those are the protein tests. Let's just go over the liver function tests. So as we know, we've hit on the liver. The liver is an absolute vital organ. It is your detox organ. It is absolutely imperative to take care of your liver. Your liver is constantly working to detox you every second minute of the day, and you want to do your best to take care of it. So, having alcohol every day is not taking care of your liver. So I tell people, like, really, watch the alcohol intake. It's a very important thing to be careful with, because some people just don't function as well with it. Me being one of them. Like, if I have more than a glass of wine with dinner, I mean, I actually can get buzzed, whereas many people can have 3-4 glasses of wine and not really feel anything from it. But your liver still has to detox all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of jams up the works, right? If it has to detox alcohol or other toxins, it can't do its normal function well. And over time, you get problems. And one thing that may show up if if the liver is not functioning appropriately, you may look at the bilirubin marker. That's a liver marker. And bilirubin is an orange pigment. It's a waste product produced from the breakdown of heme. Heme is found in, remember, hemoglobin A1C found in red blood cells. It's a product that's found from the breakdown of red blood cells. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if your liver's not getting rid of it properly, that heme can, and if it builds up quite a bit, it can turn you jaundiced, make you yellow.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that it can do. So, and that's bilirubin.
Mm-hmm.
It's a breakdown product from the heme. So that's why we want to do that. So if we see excessive bilirubin in the blood before you actually turn jaundiced, there's something going on in the liver.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Another one is called alkaline phosphatase, or ALP. This is another enzyme found in liver tissues, but it's also found throughout the body. But the highest concentrations are found in bone and liver. All right. So high levels can tell us something's going on in the bone that's not normal, or something's going on in the liver that needs to be looked at there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a liver enzyme that we're looking at. So we're talking about liver enzymes, and most of these enzymes reside in cells. If the cells are being destroyed, a lot of these enzymes are put into the blood, and you can actually measure them, right?
Right.
So ALP is one of them. Let me think about some conditions that. So ALP, if it's related to the bone, right, you may see higher levels in children and adolescents growing, right? Their bones are metabolizing, bones are growing quick, get a lot of turnover, ALP levels may be elevated, right? So if bones are still growing, that's probably a normal. So that the values for children and young adults are going to be a little bit, normal values are going to be different for people that are adults. Any condition, so including growing, but like Paget's disease, which is excessive bone growth, will raise ALP levels. All right. ALP levels, blood levels are going to be greatly increased with any liver congestion problem. Like, think about gallbladder dysfunction, where the gallbladder duct is blocked or something. You may see that ALP levels go very, very high. Liver cancer, cirrhosis, also drugs that are toxic to the liver, and then viral issues, which are silent, like hepatitis, can raise ALP levels. And think about hepatitis. Hepatitis is something that many people, especially hepatitis C, have no idea until they get a blood test. And hepatitis C, just so you guys know out there, that is not something that you want to be drinking any alcohol on. If you have hepatitis C, it is not. You're asking for big problems. You're asking for you're going to increase your risk of liver cancer, liver cirrhosis with that. So you really want to take care of your liver if you have any type of hepatitis, but especially hepatitis C. The other liver enzyme is called aspartate aminotransferase, AST. It's found throughout the body, but mostly in the heart and the liver. So it can tell us a little bit about heart function. It can also tell us a little bit of course, liver function. And usually sometimes a ratio of AST to LT is used for differentiating between different causes of liver injury. And then also it can also help us determine what the source of the injury is. Is it heart muscle, or is it liver, or is it just regular muscle injury too? So there's different isoforms of these enzymes. All right, so another liver enzyme is called alanine aminotransferase, ALT. And I know these can get confusing for people, but just all these that we're naming off, typically are looking at liver function, but could look at like muscle and bone issues also. Mm-hmm. So again, this alanine is found in the liver again, but also the kidney. So again, we can get maybe another assessment of what may be going on in the kidney. Any number of conditions that cause damage to liver cells will cause ALT to go up. Taking just over-the-counter meds like NSAIDs may have it go up. Let's see, what else about it? Basically, it's the ALT is a really good test. I mean, all of them are a good test to just catch before things become serious with organ function, especially your liver.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole purpose of this blood panel, basically.
Yeah, right. So that's why it's very important. And I can't tell you how many men, we call this the well man's podcast, but I can't tell you how many men are just really not wanting to go to the doctor for one reason or another. Women tend to be much better about it, but really you're doing yourself possible real harm by not getting these panels done on an annual basis. And most insurance should be covering this comprehensive metabolic panel.
Okay.
So those are the 14 tests that include a comprehensive metabolic panel: blood glucose, calcium, the kidney function tests, blood urea nitrogen, creatinine, the electrolytes, sodium, potassium, chloride, and then we talked about total CO2, bicarbonate, the protein test, total protein and albumin, and then the liver function tests, bilirubin, alkaline phosphatase, that's the ALP, aspartate aminotransferase, that's the AST, alanine aminotransferase, ALT, and that's it. Those are the 14 tests.
That's great. Yeah, this would be great for once you get this test done to kind of sit with this podcast and sit with your printout, your levels and whatnot, and go through it.
Yeah, and one thing before we stop, I want to tell people, 1 in 20 people that we know of, it is normal, will not necessarily fit into the normal reference ranges. So that's another thing to think about.
That's a great caveat.
And then the other thing is I've seen plenty of tests where, the liver enzymes are slightly elevated. And a lot of times when you do a second test, they normalize. So those liver enzymes will elevate with too much alcohol. They'll elevate with medications. I mean, it's probably, liver tests are a good thing to run, especially when you're on pharmaceutical meds. All those meds have to be detoxed through the liver and may cause issues in the liver. And so you want to leave your liver healthy. And there's many ways to keep your liver healthy. One of the main things is eating, a good diet and making sure that you're staying well hydrated. But there are what's out there in the naturopathic world called liver foods, and they tend to be like your sulfur containing foods like Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, egg yolks, eggs.
Eat the damn yolk.
Yeah. I mean, it's a healthy component. It's a healthy component of the egg, that's for sure. And but anyway, it can help your liver be very, very, very healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't
Anything
forget
else,
about
Brian?
yeah, don't forget about your 4 quarts of alkaline water with your ice crystals in it.
Yeah, yeah, and your latest fad supplement to take.
Yeah, your flat tummy tea.
Flat tummy tea. Right. I wish it was that easy. It's not.
We'd be out of jobs.
Yeah, that's right.
The
That's right.
podcast would be useless. You guys would all be drinking flat tummy tea.
That that's right. So anyway, before we go, this comprehensive metabolic panel is very important to run on an annual basis. Your regular medical doctors know these tests, know how to run them, use them, do it. It's very important. It can stop you from getting very, very sick. And you can, if you catch things early, it's really, really good to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing, Keoni. Very, one, beneficial for anyone listening, obviously. And then two, definitely not my forte. And I'm taking a class right now where it's complicated cases, essentially. They all have like compounding medical factors that are a little more difficult than just a orthopedic class.
Right.
And I'm seeing a lot of this come up. And so this is beneficial to me as well. So thank you.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think it's beneficial for any healthcare provider to go through and look at.
And I'll go get a blood test soon and listen to this and run through it too.
Right. Then, and I think when you get an idea and understand how the body works, when you really think about what these blood tests are, you get a really good idea about what's going on. It's like somebody who understands a car inside and out, like can hear a sound in a car and be able to tell you exactly what's going on.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing with the body. Like
Yeah.
if you understand the body and get an idea, you can get an idea of what these blood tests do and what they may indicate.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else, Keoni?
Nope, that's it.
That was great. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will see you again next week. Be well.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.